Good afternoon, everyone. I hope I'm audible enough. Can anyone please confirm
Yes,
with
we can
me?
hear you.
Okay, thank you, Judith. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining. We're going to give one to 2 minutes for others to join. Yeah, welcome. Meanwhile, you can introduce yourself in the chat box. Tell us where you're from and what you do. We're not just here to learn, we also want to connect with people that we can collaborate with in the future. I am Mary Dora Kamara. I am from Sierra Leone. So I'm one of Margrim team members. So I want to know you and want to know what you do and where you're joining from or where you're from. Thank you. Okay. Welcome again, everyone. I mean, we've waited for some time. I'm sure others will join us in the course of the webinar because we also have other things to do. I don't want to keep you people here for long. So start by sorry. So start by ground rules. Please mute your microphones, which I'm sure everybody has done. I also want to emphasize that we should all communicate with respect. And please don't forget to introduce yourself in the chat box because we're not just here to learn, we're also here to network and find future collaborations with each other. So straight to the webinar's agenda. We're starting off with the introduction, general introduction about Macri, and then go to how well do you know Africa, and we introduce our panelists. We do Q&A session, and then we round off with a closing remark. So for Magreen is an organization that's key to empowering Africans with knowledge that is needed to transition to clean energy and hence combat climate change. It was founded by three young women or ladies that are passionate about contributing to the fight against climate change in Africa. And you'll get to meet them later. Yeah. Sorry. So for Margaret's vision is to build a community and a network of like-minded people people that are passionate, that have inspiration to combat climate change, not only people, but organizations as well that are willing to collaborate with other organizations and work together to transition to clean energy for a greener world in the future. So with this, go straight to the African Energy Webinar Series. So the main aim of the Africa Energy Webinar Series is to educate and forge partnership between countries for greater energy transition perspective. Because we all know that there's a knowledge gap between African countries. So that's why Margaret thought it's fit to bridge a gap among these countries to start the Africa Energy Series so that we can learn from each other, be able to implement some, net zero targets that are working for other people, the plans, national action plans, and so on and so forth, things that one country is doing that another can implement in their country as well. So moving forward, I'll take us to the beautiful Margaret team. We have Mary Dora Kamara, myself, as the programs coordinator, and we have Suleiman Aisha Abba, who is our communication and partnership coordinator. And then we have Georgette Celestino Dor, who happens to be our technical coordinator. So I would allow Georgette to continue from here. We go through this Mentimeter. Georgette, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me clearly. And thank you all for joining in. Please feel free to scan the barcode on your screen or join via logging on to mentimeter.com and using the code on the screen, or you can click on the link in the chat box and you're able to go straight away to our Q&A that we're going to have to see how best you know Africa. So if you've been able to scan it, great. If you haven't, please feel free to tap on the link and I'll quickly share my screen so we can go over it together. So please let me know if you can see my screen. I can see someone has already joined, and yes, we are at the first question. First question is, how was Zambia formerly called? So we have Abyssinia, we have the Northern. Okay, more people are filling up. We have Tanganyika and Shiba. So without further ado, not to take time because I know our panelists have a lot to tell us today. The correct answer is Northern Rhodesia. The next question is, what is the currency used in Gambia? Is it pound? Is it rupee? Is it lek? Is it kwacha? So please feel free to share your ideas. Is it kwacha? Is it lek? Is it rupee? Is it pound? Let's see how best you know Africa. Because one of my most favorite things about this webinar is I get to learn about Africa. Because on my own ordinary, I wouldn't know, but at least learning from people's views and seeing what is happening in different countries. So the correct answer to that is kwacha. That's the currency that is used in Zambia. Our next question is, which of the following countries borders the south of Zambia? Is it Eritrea? Is it Zimbabwe? Is it South Africa? Is it Kenya? So let's see. Talking about the south of Africa. We've been to the north, south, east, west. Which of these countries it is? Eritrea, Zimbabwe, South Africa, or Kenya? Okay, the correct answer here is Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is to the south of Zambia. Then our final question for today is, what is the capital of Zambia? Is it Lusaka? Is it Harare? Is it Windhoek or Lesotho? Okay, I think today a lot of people already know a lot about Zambia, or maybe we have more Zambians on the call today. So yes, the correct answer is Lusaka, Harare's capital of Zimbabwe. So yeah, thank you very much everyone for joining, and I will pass it back now to Mary to continue. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Georgette. Um, I mean, before now, I didn't know that they were using, is it Kwacha as their currency? Anyways, that's the beauty of this webinar. So, sorry. So we go straight to our speaker. Our first speaker, she is a lady. Her name is Ada Bitia Chimbo. Please correct me if I'm pronouncing your name, if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. Ada. She is a Zambian change maker, an author, and demographer. She is fervent for grassroots development. She's also a founder and project lead of the Lean On Foundation, a youth organization dedicated to providing sustainable development initiatives to marginalized communities. Wow. She holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree in demography with a major in demography and a minor in development studies from the University of Zambia. She is an author and commits she is the author and committed to implementing sustainable development solutions tailored to specific need of each. Sorry, I don't know what's going on. And she's also active with, advocating for women, children, and youth. So I hope she's in the call because we'll be talking a lot soon. So go to the next speaker, who is, please correct me if I'm not pronouncing your name um, correctly. I'm sorry. Chimuya Muvende. He's also a Zambian youth who is passionate about making a positive difference in society. He is an economist, climate change educator, and activist. He is also a writer and a founder of the organization called Minds for Change Foundation Limited, a youth organization working to help provide solutions for pressing community challenges. He is also a member of Fridays for Futures, proactive in the Zambian chapter. Currently, he is engaged in climate education and working on implementing climate migration projects that are helping at a time when his country is going through one of the worst droughts. So without further ado, I want to have them on the call to be muted because we want to know Zambia well. So I'll be asking them things that we're hopeful that they give us answers to. I hope you're on the call, Shimuyanda and Ada. Hello.
Yes, I
Hello.
am. Nchimonya.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. So the first question I'll be posing it to Ada. So we want to know, like, how has climate change affected agricultural and water resources in Zambia, and what measures are being taken to mitigate these effects? This question is
Um,
for Ada.
okay. Thank you so much, Mary, for having me. And I also want to just take this time to thank Green for the wonderful work that you're doing in bringing this platform together, as I believe it is very cardinal in our fight for climate change as Africa and also as the global sphere as a whole. Climate change is sorry, I had some interruptions. Climate change poses significant challenges to many regions out there, and Zambia has been no exception. And as a country that is heavily reliant on agriculture and hydropower, the impacts of climate change on these sectors has been profound, particularly especially on the food security aspect of the and also economic stability and just the overall development of the country as a whole. In response to your question, some of the specific ways in which climate change has affected, first and foremost, the agricultural sector, is that erratic rainfall and droughts. The country is currently facing one of the most massive droughts we've ever faced, and the erratic rainfall patterns and also the prolonged droughts have significantly reduced agricultural productivity. And this is something that has negatively affected us, especially because we are a country that is heavily reliant on agriculture. Agriculture is one of the driving sectors of the economy and also is a major source of livelihood for most people, especially those in the rural areas. We have crops like maize, which is our staple food, one of our staple foods, which we use to produce mealie meal. And production has greatly reduced, like the yields have reduced due to the unpredictable rainfall patterns, which have partly been caused by the El Nino conditions, which further exacerbates this issue. And another way in which that we've been negatively affected by climate change, particularly in the agricultural sector, is flooding. Increased frequency and intensity of floods have greatly damaged crops in most areas and also eroded the soil and disrupted planting schedules in general. So it's very difficult to be able to ascertain the right time to be able to plant because these conditions are making it very difficult. And also, I believe the rising temperatures also that are caused by climate change have negatively affected the agricultural sector and have decreased the productivity of agriculture because most of the times we find that, especially in this farming period that we had from 2023 to 2024 farming periods, we had most parts of the country experiencing droughts where crops withered, and it was so bad. Another way in which climate change has affected the water resources also is water quality. The extreme weather conditions like floods have contaminated water resources, which has not only affected human consumption, but also agricultural productivity as a whole. And just going back to the high temperatures, I believe that water availability has also reduced. The climate change has led to long periods of droughts, which have significantly reduced water levels in rivers, in lakes, and reservoirs. And this has really affected not only irrigation, but also drinking water supply. And most importantly, it has affected hydropower generation. Zambia is heavily reliant on hydropower generation, hydropower electricity for supply to its consumers. And so we have been negatively affected by climate change. The country currently is facing, on paper, 12 hours of load shedding in a day, but it's so severe such that there are places where we're having as much as 20 hours of load shedding in a day. Like you only have power for like 4 hours. Other areas only have power for like 2 hours, and it's been so difficult. Coming to the next part of your question, some of the mitigation measures that are currently being put in place are that on 29th of February 2024, the president of the Republic of Zambia had announced that drought as a national disaster. And because of this announcement, some of the ways that the DMMU, which is the Disaster Management Mitigation Unit, and other line sector ministries are doing is that they're channeling more resources towards humanitarian relief purposes to be able to ensure that affected citizens do not go hungry, because especially this past farming period of 2023 to 2024, we had experienced so much crop failure. So the government has worked to channel more resources towards humanitarian relief purposes by, for example, sending food to areas which were massively hit by drought and crop failure ultimately. Another mitigation measure that is currently being put in place is that the government is working hand in hand with the Food Reserve Agency, which sort of works to store the excess maize that is produced, like it buys maize produced by farmers. And so the government is working hand in hand with the Food Reserve Agency to provide purchasable maize, because the crop failure has also affected the price of mealie meal. And so to be able to curb or to reduce the price of mealie meal, the government is working hand in hand so that it is easy for people to be able to go to the Food Reserve Agency and buy the maize on their own and be able to take it for processing, for processing so that it can be turned into mealie meal. And another thing that the government is working to do to mitigate these measures is that the government has currently removed tax on maize imports. So this is basically to just be able to encourage more imports, people to be able to import maize from other parts of Africa into Zambia. Additional measures that are currently also being put in place is that the government is encouraging people to be able to move from the norm of adopting mealie meal as a staple food to be able to consider other sources of food, though this is still a challenge, and I believe we've got a long way to go to be able to just move from having maize as our staple food. Another notable thing that has currently been done is that the government, working with the Zambia's defense forces, are working to expand irrigation systems as a way to increase food production. So we are seeing that there is so much of irrigation that is being advocated for, and the government is at hand to be able to set up irrigation schemes to be able to ensure that there is adequate supply of food production in the country. And another measure that is being done, particularly to curb the water resource shortages that we've currently experienced, is the load shedding that I had mentioned earlier, where the country is experiencing load shedding to be able to sort of manage the little resources, water resources that are currently available, while it is also working to be able to source for additional importation of electricity. So there's rationing of energy as well as promotion of alternative energy sources, which I wouldn't want to go so much into. Yeah, so basically I wish to state that climate change has significantly impacted Zambia's agriculture and water resources, and this has affected food security and economic stability as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that explanation, Ada. That's really, really sad. And we pray that we continue to work together to improve these effects of climate change in our countries and continents. And we go to the next question, which is for Shimuya. Sorry, I hope I'm calling your name well. So, what are the this one goes to you. What are the observed impacts of climate change on Zambia's biodiversity and natural ecosystem? Are you on the call, please?
Okay. Yes, I am. Thank you very much. Can you get me?
Yeah, I can, loud and clear.
Oh yeah.
Please, yeah, we don't want to go over time. Can you please just be like
Yes,
3
yes.
minutes?
I'll be as precise as possible. Yeah.
Okay,
So thank
thank
you very
you.
much.
You're
I'm
welcome.
Chimonya, or I'm Chimonya, or as some Nigerians pronounce it, Chimwanya. Yeah. Basically, like others talked about, I think the impact of climate change have been devastating for a country like Zambia. And for me, I think my focus in this case is to look at the biodiversity and also natural ecosystems. We've seen a situation, a shift. The climate change has had two kind of impacts that we've had in terms of, if I look at this from the context of drought and flooding. So you see, in one end, it has brought about drought, and this my colleague was talking about. But the second thing that it has affected also, because of these changes in climate change, we've experienced some areas that have had floodings, causing a loss of human life, destruction of property, and the like. We've seen flooding in towns like Mumbai, which had so much uh, an effect where water was gone so much high and a lot of people lost their lives, animals and the things related to that were the possible. And then also see that there was a lot of death of a lot of animal species due to these effects of climate change. The most affected areas that we've experienced there in this context in terms of biodiversity loss are the sectors of forestry, fisheries, wildlife, and water. I think water has already been cutted about. So if I look at forestry, we see from the impact that because of this shortage of power and electricity, we see people cutting more trees for charcoal. Others is because of this effect of climate change causing a drought. They have lost their source of livelihood, which in most impact has been agriculture. Because now they can no longer do agriculture productivity, vegetable growing, or the like, due to the changes in the water. As a way of survival, they cut down trees in order for economic sustenance. So they cut down trees, make charcoal or for firewood and the like, and they be able to get something. But in the end, we find that because of this cutting down of trees, the environment is changing, and this is why probably maybe even the drought situation is being worsened. We see because of this same also drying of water and water bodies, we see the death of many species in the water. There's a lot of fish that is now difficult to actually find, causing an impact of high rise in terms of the cost of now accessing fish and the like. We see also that Zambia has been a home to a lot of animal species, but now because of these same changes, lack of this same grass that some animals eat and the like, we see a lot of death of wild animals. We see in Zambia had a lot of animals such as rhinos, which are quite rare species in Africa and world at large. But we've seen the death of most of the rhinos. I think, if not mistaken, now there should be only one out of the recent five that we had. So you see an impact that the climate change impact on the diversity has been quite bad in that it has affected many sectors. And I think I've just focused on forestry, fisheries, wildlife, and water. I thank you for now.
Thank you very much for that explanation, and thank you for answering the question. And we'll go back to Ada. So please, can you explain what economic sectors in Zambia are most vulnerable to climate change, and what policies are being implemented to protect these sectors? So we want to know. Over to you, Ada.
Thank you so much. First and foremost, I wish to state that all sectors have been uniquely affected by climate change. But however, I think the sectors that are most vulnerable to climate change in Zambia are agriculture, infrastructure, and energy. Agriculture, as I had earlier outlined, particularly maize production, has faced significant risks due to the erratic rainfall and prolonged droughts, which has drastically reduced yields of this staple crop. The energy sector also, as I had mentioned earlier, which is heavily reliant on hydropower, has been threatened due to the reduction in water levels in most of the rivers and dams, which has led to power shortages. Infrastructure also, I believe, is at risk because in times of increase in rainfall, which causes droughts, we've witnessed situations where there are bridges that have been washed off, there are houses, roofs that have been, blown away, and even schools in some certain areas. We've seen situations where schools have been destroyed due to heavy rainfall. And so I believe the three sectors, agriculture, energy, and infrastructure sector, have been most vulnerable to climate change. Some of the policies that I believe the government is currently putting up to be able to mitigate some of these or protect some of these sectors is that there's implementation of climate smart agriculture, which is being implemented for the agricultural sector. And this is basically meant to enhance resiliency in agricultural sector and initiatives also to diversify energy sources. The government currently is proactively promoting renewable energy to be able to reduce dependence on hydropower. Zambia is also in the process of developing its national adaptation plan, which sort of provides a comprehensive framework for addressing most of the climate change impacts that the country has faced. Another notable policy that the government has put in place is that ZESCO, which is Zambia's primary electricity utility company, is undergoing significant structural reforms to be able to not only enhance its efficiency, but to also bring on board competition in the electricity sector. So the government recently, I think this past week or the other week, had approved what they called open access to electricity transmission and distribution lines, which involves several key changes. One of them is that the system operator function, which is responsible for managing the electricity grid, will be separated from ZESCO. And this separation is intended to be able to create impartial and efficient management of the grid, which will ultimately reduce potential conflicts of interest, as there will be an independent party that will be managing the electricity grid. Another notable reform that is currently being undertaken by ZESCO is that there's what they've called independent system and market operator, which will be established, and the entity will be basically to oversee the operation of the electricity grid and ensure fair access of electricity for all producers and suppliers. Because as much as we are facing load shedding currently, there are situations where other areas have been disproportionately affected. Like there are areas that are facing like massive load shedding, and there are areas where there is no load shedding. And so I think putting in place this system will be able to ensure impartial supply of electricity. And also there's another policy that will be put in place, which is the open access regulation. So the new regulation will be able to outline the rules for accessing transmission and distribution networks, and that these rules will be able to promote non-discriminatory access, ensuring that all market participants have equal opportunities to use the infrastructure. So in the past, it was very difficult for other external players to be able to come on board in the energy sector and supply electricity because of the bureaucracy, and also because of there were so many things that were put in place that were sort of hindering conditions that were hindering other market players to come on board, such as infrastructure, because setting up energy or electricity supply requires a lot of money. And so it was difficult for other market players to come on board. But with the new policy that has been put in place, it will sort of be able to encourage other players to come on board and be able to benefit by using the existing infrastructure to provide more electricity to the consumers as a whole. And I believe this will not only be very good for the consumers, in that we'll be able to have more choice on exactly the electricity provider, but it will also be able to increase efficiency in the energy sector, as there will be competition and multiple players that will enter the market. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ada. That is so much to take in. Thank you for that much explanation. Thank you for answering questions. So we go back to Chimuya. What progress has Zambia made in transitioning to renewable energy sources, and what challenges remain? So I hope you heard me clearly. Are you on the call,
Yes,
please?
yes, I am. Yeah, no, thank you very much for that question. I think to start with, we should talk about the issue that the fact that renewable energy is something that is very important for a country like Zambia and Africa at large. And most of the progress that has been made for a country like Zambia is in terms of considering coming up with frameworks we have the national energy policy, and we see that in the in the eighth national development plan, the aspect of transitioning to have an energy mix and also focusing on renewable energy is something that has been emphasized. However, just like other many African countries, the problem that we've had is that we have so much things that are on paper. We have some of these policies that are not being implemented. The issue that comes in is the rate at which we're implementing this. We see that one of the biggest challenges that we've had is that we have this potential. It has been actually estimated that Zambia's got the potential to produce between 2,300 megawatts to 300,000 megawatts of solar energy. But currently, we only produce about 76 megawatts. Imagine that huge gap. We see that currently there is no wind energy that is that is being produced. Oh, there's no energy that is produced using the wind, and despite having this potential to actually do so, the major challenges that we've actually grappled with as a country are quite many, if I could say. Some of them range from the issue of police and regulatory obstacles, where we see that even from the context that most of these policies are not clear, that can guide investors and potential developers to come into the country. Because of these uncertainties in terms of what is required, what makes one qualify for incentives and the like, because of all this, we see a lot of investors shun away from doing that. The second thing is actually the cost of power in a country like Zambia. If you transition to things like of course, clean energy. Clean energy is not as cheap as it could be stated. So for us to actually transition to that, if someone's coming to invest in this, it would take them quite a long time for them to actually increase that. But we see that there's some progress that has happened in terms of approval of what is called the multi-year tariff adjustment, where these powers and the cost of power is actually being adjusted, that it can become attractive for investors to actually come and invest in Zambia. We also see that, like I indicated, that the cost of financing this is not quite cheap. So the financial obstacles that are being currently faced, these financial obstacles range from the high cost of borrowing and also just difficult to actually get this financing. We also see the part of technical obstacles. Not so many people are vested in terms of experts in terms of energy, renewable energy technologies. So for complex projects that require large scale solar and wind pipes, I don't think we've got so many experts in that particular field. And this is why we've seen a number of international organizations coming into the country to try to offer technical support. And this is what has been happening over the recent past. Apart from that, we also see infrastructure obstacles. I think the country is yet to invest so much in terms of infrastructure, especially in the places like the rural areas where this can actually be well done. Another part which I think I can focus on is actually the social obstacles. Many communities, particularly those rural areas, are not familiar with renewable energy technologies and may be skeptical of their benefits. You need to, whenever you're implementing any project, like we involved in my organization and others, I think I'll speak to this later, we need to have a lot of community engagement. As a result, if we're not engaging this too much, it becomes a problem. But probably, I'm not just talk about the challenges, but I would also just want to mention one or two possible fixes to these challenges. There's really a need to increase the access to financing for the many players. There's need to ensure that it's cost reflective so that we can have investors being forced to focus on this. And lastly, but not the least, I anticipate that from now going forward, we see a lot of Zambians focusing more on renewable energy because of the challenge that we faced. Like Ada talked about the issue of load shedding, where we have electricity rationing. We actually have half a day we do not have power, and sometimes it even exceeds more than that because people are being inconvenienced both for their residential stay and also for their business or commercial purposes. So they're more likely to start transitioning to the renewable energy. I submit for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Chimoya, for for giving us answers to that question. So we go back to Ada. Ada, can you please outline Zambia's national policies on climate change and how they align with international commitments like the Paris Agreement?
Thank you so much, Mary, for that question. One of the notable things about the Paris Agreement is that it requires all parties to put forward their best efforts through nationally determined adaptation. And I think this is something that we have seen in Zambia, particularly through the National Adaptation Plan that has been put in place. So the National Adaptation Plan policy basically sets clear goals and objectives for adaptation, which first and foremost include reducing vulnerability, enhancing adaptive capacity, building resilience, and also ensuring sustainable development in the face of climate change. Also, the government, Zambia recently launched its nationally determined contribution, which is basically an implementation framework. This implementation framework takes an integrated approach to climate action across 11 sectors to be able to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and also increase general resilience to climate change aspects. So Zambia's nationally determined contribution implementation framework is one of the milestones in the country's efforts to advance mitigation and adaptation across line line sectors. And I believe it is not only in line with national development priorities, but I believe it is a significant contribution to the Paris Agreement. Another policy that has currently been put in place is the national green growth strategy, which will be implemented from 2024 to 2030. And the national green growth strategy will require an estimated $10.4 billion to be able to implement it. And this only goes to show just how much commitment Zambia is putting in place to be able to contribute to the international agreements that it has committed to. One of the notable things about the National Green Growth Strategy is that one of the notable things about the National Green Growth Strategy is that it will be spearheading the sustainability agenda, and it will be through avenues such as the Zambia's Vision 2030, which emphasizes development that is anchored on sustainable ecosystems and natural resource management principles. Another key policy document that Zambia currently has in place is the 8th National Development Plan, which has a pillar that is dedicated primarily to efforts aimed at promoting environmental sustainability. And I believe central to Zambia's climate strategy are key documents also such as the National Climate Change Response Strategy, which is very relevant to the agreement, to the Paris Agreement. I believe these initiatives are crucial as they not only identify the vulnerabilities, but they also outline adaptation measures across sectors like agriculture, energy, and infrastructure. I mentioned the National Adaptation Plan, for example. It engages stakeholders in a participatory process to be able to ensure that adaptation actions are well informed. So this includes being able to work with not only line ministries, but to also work with people on the ground, people in marginalized communities that have been directly impacted and adversely impacted by climate change. And I wish to state also that Zambia's policies, I believe, are closely attuned to the goals of the Paris Agreement in that they emphasize adaptive capacity and they also reduce vulnerability to climate impacts and also promote sustainable practices such as the climate smart agriculture, which I had shared about some time back, and also renewable energy development. So I believe the alignment with these documents and policies sort of underscores Zambia's commitment to global climate action while also addressing the local development needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ada. But I'm not sure. Maybe you did not mention it, but you did not mention, or maybe it's not in Zambia, gender inclusivity. I'm big on it, and I love it when women talk about it. So maybe We'll talk about it later. That's by the way. So we go back to Timuya. Can you please answer this for us? How are local communities and indigenous groups being involved in climate action initiatives in Zambia?
That's a very, very interesting question, and it's really it's really something that is dear to me. In that we have a situation where most of the people that are affected by the effects of climate change are people that are indigenous, the local communities themselves are getting affected by this. But we see a situation in which most of these initiatives that are currently being done are being done by local organizations like ourselves. I'll talk about my organization, Minds for Change. We realize that because of the impact of this drought, we there are a lot of people that have lost their source of livelihood. Therefore, we mobilize some funds and looked at a community where we engaged them, where we thought we should put the boreholes and stuff like that, and were able to donate some boreholes to this community. What it does is that it has actually provided water for them and be able to do that. And in a similar vein, we have a lot of youth organizations that are mushrooming in the country, where local people and young people and indigenous groups have been largely involved in these in these initiatives. However, I see little being done from the national level, where you have things like the government themselves or others trying to um, fund certain youth projects. We find that most of these projects that we have been able to engage and to help the community are coming from out there. You really need to apply for resources from out of the country or even out of Africa for you to be able to do this. So how are people being involved? They're being involved by the mushrooming of most of these youth and international groups that are coming in to try to help and tackle the issue of climate change. On the national level, we see so much in terms of adaptation measures. We look in terms of commitments. We see, like others talked about, our commitment to the NDCs, the Paris agreements, and things that we're doing that. But in this context, I feel like most of the things that are being done are just being done by people in isolation. In that they're not, it's not really a national-driven agenda. That there's resources that are particularly being given for young people to actually do that. But the community involvement has been most largely by a youth organization like ours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, as a last one from my end for you, what role does climate financing play in Zambia's climate action plans? And how is the country leveraging international funds to support its efforts? Sorry.
Thank you so much, Mary, for that final question. First and foremost, I wish to state that climate financing plays a crucial role in the fight for climate change. And Zambia's climate actions require a lot of resources. I remember the government had shared recently that Zambia needs about 22 billion for humanitarian recovery needs amidst the drought. And so the country is currently heavily reliant on not only domestic budget allocations, but there is also need for international funds to be able to strengthen resilience to climate change impacts and also transition towards a low carbon economy. In terms of financing support initiatives, especially in the international sector, one of the ways in which the country is leveraging climate action initiatives is through funding which is allocated to enhance resilience in sectors that are vulnerable to climate impact, such as agriculture, water resource management, and infrastructure. We've seen many key players, international key players, coming on board to be able to provide relief. Recently, I believe should be embassy of United Kingdom had come on board to be able to help governments in terms of its fight with the drought response by being able to increase the number of people that are on social cash transfer, which is one of the ways in which government is working to mitigate climate change and climate action. Renewable energy development also. I believe that investment in renewable energy projects such as solar energy are critical to reducing Zambia's dependency on fossil fuels and also promoting sustainable energy. And so climate finance is supporting capacity building programs and providing technical assistance to be able to strengthen institutions' ability to integrate climate considerations into national policies and planning. So of late, we've seen there's been government has really come on board, and also we're seeing a lot of players that are coming on board to be able to fight the effects that are coming with climate change. And these players are not only local players, but we're also seeing international players that are coming on board. Another way that Zambia is leveraging international funds through channels such as the Global Climate Fund, and the country accesses funds from international climate finance through mechanisms such as the Green Climate Fund and the Adaptation Fund. And these funds are being channeled towards priority projects identified in Zambia's National Adaptation Plan and the other strategic documents that are shared. I believe also bilateral and multilateral partnerships are also key in that Zambia is currently collaborating, like many other countries, with bilateral partners such as development agencies such as World Bank and the Africa Development Bank to be able to secure climate financing for specific projects and programs. In conclusion, also, I wish to state that private sector investment is also very crucial, as Zambia currently we've seen is seeking to attract private sector investments in renewable energy and other climate resilient initiatives through mechanisms such as the public-private partnerships and other investment incentives. I also wish to state that despite all these efforts, there are still challenges in accessing and effectively utilizing climate finance. These challenges are complex, and it is basically, I believe, due to limited institutional capacity and also competition for funds among developing countries, because we have many developing countries that are, for example, going to most of these big agencies such as the World Bank to be able to seek financing. And sometimes it comes at a challenge, and it also comes at a cost for countries like Zambia. But I believe Zambia continues to work on strengthening project implementation, and we hope to see that more projects and climate actions will be put in place, because what we have currently are just good policies. We have good documents that have been put in place, and like Chumunia said, we hope to be able to see the implementation aspect of it, because I believe this is what is very key to it. So my hope is that by leveraging international funds and also strengthening domestic capacity, especially domestic capacity, I believe that all of the needs that all the climate change conditions or impacts that we're witnessing are uniquely faced by different countries, and it is very important to not only improve our capacity as African countries individually, but it is also important to be able to secure locally domesticated financing, so that we can be able to provide the unique solutions to the challenges that we're facing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ada. Thank you. That was really insightful. Thank you for that explanation and answering our question. So, final one for Shimunya from my end. What are Zambia's long-term strategies for achieving net zero emissions, and what milestones have been set to track progress?
Thank you very much for that question. And I somehow feel like my question has partially been answered by Ada, in that most of the policies that are centered around our national commitments, Zambia in the past 3 years, because of trying to show our seriousness and to have dedication towards dealing with climate change impact and also going towards the green side, they decided to have what is called the Ministry of Green Economy, which is focusing on how can the country really become green in different sectors, tackling climate change effects, and also trying to look at it from the context of how do we ensure that sectors are also resilient. So we see long-term projects such as trying to deal with climate smart agriculture, trying to transition towards the same thing. We see a reform towards away from what is called the Farmer Input Support Program to what is called the Comprehensive Agriculture Support Program, which in this case also brings in all different aspects of smart agriculture being put in place. We see an aspect of reforestation. There are deliberate programs that are being made by the government to cause reforestation. And one particular thing, how people are being also involved in this particular sector, um, it's the issue of having what are called by carbon partners. For those that may not understand, by carbon partners are those that come in and they check maybe in a community how they're keeping their trees, and if they do not cut their trees, they're given some money in exchange for those emissions that they're not doing. So in this case, the emissions that are being done by other countries are being offset by the trees that we're keeping in this country. And that is what is called the carbon trading aspect. So there's regulation that is actually being put in to ensure that we have as much as possible, have a lot of people that are engaged in this carbon trading. I think we saw that in 2020, 2021, 2022 at the COP27. No, COP 26, where we as a country committed that we are going to focus on that. Another thing that probably maybe I would want to mention that we've been able to focus on in terms of long-term impacts of this. Sorry, that's getting some distraction. Yeah, in terms of having this long-term, is try to as much as possible involve different sectors to ensure that they are looking at it from the context that as they're accessing their financing, they can access affordable financing. So in this context, what has happened is that for the green projects, we now have what is called the green bonds that are being offered just for green projects. So these are actually giving incentives for players that are going to get finance from that are going to get finance from the stock market or others. But then in this context, there are these incentives that are given to people that are doing that by reducing certain costs that are incurred. So for someone to be listed ordinarily, it could come at a higher cost, but because of the nature of the projects that are going to undertake, we have this context. And we also see an impact, an aspect where we have a lot of players, like I indicated, a lot of youth groups and others that are coming in, and you see a bit of collaboration and a bit of put pressure on the government to work in collaboration. So if we have this good collaboration between the local people, the communities, organization together with the government, I think we'll be able to achieve these net zero emissions. So basically, in a nutshell, those are some of the things, and also to ensure that we remain committed to things that we are standing at international level. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that insightful explanation, and thank you for having us and for us having you. Thank you for joining. Thank you for accepting our invitation. So before we close, is there anyone on the call that has something to ask? This is a Q&A session time. You can ask Ada. I believe they are all on the call, Ada and Chimia. We can ask them questions, and if there is clarification or if you have a comment, yeah, to add or something to add to what they've already said, you can either drop it in the chat box or unmute and just contribute. So for the next 1 minute, if you have anything to say before I conclude from my end. kindly feel free to do it. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Feel free to, send it in the chat box or just unmute and, you know, take it from there. I believe we don't have shy people here. Please, if you have anything that you want to confirm or you want to add or you want to contribute, you have a comment, kindly just, okay. Looks like everybody's okay. See something. Oh, okay. This is just a thank you message to the presenters. It was insightful. Thank you. So, without wasting time, on behalf of Margaret, I want to thank Ada and Chimunya for taking your time and joining our webinar. Being our speaker, you have been really helpful. The presentations were okay. Ada is saying that you should follow the link in the chat box to check the projects they did. Okay, we will. Thank you, Ada. So we want to thank both of you for honoring our invite, for being our wonderful speakers. People have been really, really good today. We say kudos to you and thank you. We look forward to collaborating with you in future engagement. So feel free to reach out to Margaret for anything that we can help you and help. And that's it. So our final slide is sorry. Our final slide will be to follow us on our social media platforms and be a part of our webinars. We'll have another webinar for next week. So we're doing the webinar for all 52 or 53 or 54 African countries. So we've done more than 17 countries so far. If you want access to the other webinars, we'll give you access to them. And we're even planning to do more. So you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and X, which was Twitter. And also don't forget to like our post, comments, share, and we look forward to collaborating with you. Thank you to everyone that joined. We appreciate you a lot. Margaret really appreciates you. Thank you. See you next week. Please come back next week. And we hope to have you next week. Next week is going to be impactful as well. Bye, everyone. Until next week.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. You're welcome.